welcome, Purple.
Hello, Jim, Hughesy and Rabsy, and hasn't Hughesy just settled into that Bill Brownless chair very seamlessly?
No, look, Bill is on the Amazing Race, so he'll probably be back tomorrow, I think.
He'd have to be the first dropped off. He'd have to be. What are we dealing with here, please? Jeremy Cameron?
Yeah, we'll start with Jeremy Cameron. We saw him knock himself out effectively, or at least cause his own damage to the head region. 9 minutes to go in that semi-epic game against Port Adelaide down there at the Cattery. I raise it today because the following morning, Hughesy, he reported into the club that he did have concussion symptoms and was as such placed into those protocols. Yep. But the conversation he had with the doctor at that point in time, 3 goals down the Cats, trying to come back against Port Adelaide, he just told the doctor he's not going off. And the AFL signed off on it. Andrew Dillon, the Chief Executive Officer today, had this to say about the actual handling of it and also the talk. And I've got no doubt at some stage independent doctors will come into play, but as you'll hear here from Andrew Dillon, not soon.
So we've got doctors that are in the ARC and we've got doctors at the clubs, and I don't think they need to be independent because the doctors at the clubs have got the best interests of the players, and that's what they're employed to do, and that's what they do. What we do have is some of the most stringent and well thought out concussion protocols in, not only sport in Australia but in world sport. We will continue to refine those protocols, but I'm comfortable with how it was handled on the weekend and comfortable with the protocols as they stand.
So officially, as you heard, they're signed off by the AFL. I think it's valid to raise the question if it was 9 minutes at the start of the first quarter, not 9 minutes to go with a tight game. I believe it would have been handled differently.
It was too late for me. Sorry, JB, but I thought that they'd got the job done, so I went to sleep. So, but did the vision say that he was definitely concussed?
No, it didn't. It was one of those whiplash head into the ground.
Right. So you didn't see him stagger.
No.
Yeah,
he
right.
got up.
Took a while to get up. Yeah, right. And clearly there was issues because he reported the next day that there were.
He also kicked a very freakish goal in the last second.
Which wasn't allowed.
Wasn't allowed. Yeah. They then took it back.
He did
for
too.
The
That's too. Yep. Look, Andrew Dillon, again, I get it. And they have tightened up their protocols around it. But it was only last year where Port Adelaide had 2 players accidentally clash in Aliir and Lockie Jones. And that moment was passed and walked past, and those 2 players just came straight back on, and then the AFL fined them the next week for what they did. So there's still a need in my eyes to tighten up some of the processes around it. And just while we're on this issue, Tom McCartin, who was collected by Callum Brown last weekend in round 8, he will miss another week coming up. The Swans have got a game against your mob, the Blues, this week, and he will be out again.
So his brother obviously is never going to play again.
He's not playing again, and Tom's had a history himself in this space, and they will take as much time as they need. And John Longmire spoke today that they've just already ruled him out, even though he's going to be out of the time frame designated for that concussion protocol. I don't know where you want to start. Depends.
So actually, can we talk about Luke Parker's goal? Did you see Luke Parker's goal?
I didn't.
No.
In the VFL.
It was from 90. I know we don't talk about the VFL, and we had that conversation off air. But have you not seen that, JB?
No, I haven't seen it.
It was 90 metres out.
It was.
Did you see it?
Well, I didn't know we're going down to the VFL part.
Mate, you need to see it.
It was 90?
It was...
No, I'm going to go with about 65.
I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it?
No, I think
it was at Arthur Street, Jim. And it
was called magnificently by Joey, but I haven't seen it.
Oh, is that what did he want to talk about? Was it? Anyway,
no, it wasn't. It was another issue.
I'll get that out
Wednesday
night.
He can't get into the team. So look, why don't we start with the Swans?
That's incredible.
Yeah, it is. He's been back 2 weeks now, and to think that I think finished last year as important as he's ever been in a very long and established career at the Swans, just cannot get back in. James Jordan coming into the team. Obviously, Taylor Adams has also been elevated into it. I know they've still got Callum Mills, and he won't be seen until after the bye at the earliest. He's got a calf injury now to add to the shoulder problem he had in the off season, but. They are just absolutely flying. Heaney, again, Jim, officially got votes in the Coaches Award. I think that's every single game.
If he doesn't play another game, he wins the Brownlow.
You are big on that.
That's how far in front he is.
Yeah, but Nick Daicos is coming.
Yeah,
he's back in. He's hitting his strap. Hayward, for the second week in a row, kicked the 4 goals. This was a game that the Swans played against Fremantle, and obviously the emotion attached to their playing of that game a day after knowing that their former teammate and mate in Cam McCarthy had passed away was really affecting them adversely. But just back onto the football side of it, the Swans absolutely flying, and to be able to have Luke Parker, as you say, Hughesy, not part of it, it's good. I don't know which is the better story out of the weekend, Essendon or Port Adelaide. I'll go with Essendon because I think their turnaround since the round 4 loss in gather round to Port Adelaide, it was a 69-point drubbing, and I thought, and maybe I was wrong, because they've turned around 5 matches since. Western Bulldogs, Adelaide, Collingwood, West Coast, and now GWS. Collingwood was a draw, but they have not lost since that moment. They've had a few close near misses. In Adelaide was a controversial finish with the Sam Draper moment. West Coast, they only got over the line by 6 points, but it doesn't matter. They're winning. And I feel the Giants' win that they executed on the weekend just gone in Melbourne was as good a performance as they've had for some time.
Is it the coach, JB? You know him really well.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And they're playing so much better. I don't you reckon? When you actually just watch Essendon play, pardon me, they're not getting scored against. And that was the big issue they had.
Yeah.
Well, his record at North was very good over a long period,
Extraordinary.
wasn't
Yep. He's brilliant, Brad. And once he taught them how to defend the ground and actually not, when you turn it over, get scored against immediately, they were always going to be a good side because they have got weapons.
They do. And obviously Mackay coming across from North Melbourne as a free agent has straightened them up. Redmond's just continued his really good career. And the elevation of Cole Langford, Hughesy, where Peter Wright went down for effectively half a season at the start of last year. They didn't have a full forward. They found one out of nowhere, and he's a gun at it.
Yeah.
He's got himself into a Coleman medal possibility.
And how much would the
Durham?
AFL be loving
Semi
this?
Durham, yeah.
Their supporter base is as big as anyone's. They are going to be filling the MCG or Marvel for the rest of the year, no doubt about it.
It is obviously the Friday game at the Cattery, Port Adelaide upsetting Geelong. It was, again, in a contextual sense, one of their better performances for some time, including years where they've finished in prelim finals. To go down there without their captain, Connor Rosey, to establish the lead, to withhold and withstand the late fight back by the Cats, and
Was it weird down there, JB, to see that with all those locals would have been so quiet?
No, they were quiet. We had been told that they were going to be daring with the ball. They were going to take the ball off the line. They were going to play on at all costs. That we knew coming into the game that.
Did you get the briefing? Did you from the? Or you just
the whisper was that that's what they were going to do because they were so disappointed the week before in the showdown and how boring they'd been ball in hand. So I thought, right, let's see how this goes because Geelong defend better than almost any team in the comp. So I thought they're just going to get opened up. They're going to turn it over and get scored against. They'll abandon this within 5 minutes. And there's 8-2. And I'm like, bloody hell.
Yeah.
It was so impressive. So big tick to Kenny for me to have the bravery to go down there and play that way.
Yes.
And then the players to execute it was just exceptional.
Was Reece Stanley one of the earliest subbings?
Yeah,
he got
it was.
subbed real
Yeah,
early.
he did.
10 minutes into the second quarter. It
Wow.
helped turn them round because Mullins came on and then played a role in the second half that allowed the Cats to get back into it. I love Jason Horne-Francis's game.
Yep.
People
Brilliant.
may have argued that Ollie Wines and Zach Butters over the 4 quarters may have had as much impact, but I just loved how he set it up and he kicked goals and set goals up and just gave them a presence and just wants to win as much as anyone who's ever played the game.
So far, we've mentioned 3 people who used to be at North Melbourne who are starring.
Hughesy.
It's a good point, though, Hughesy. It's a really good point.
see anything funny in
Goldstein,
any of that.
Mackay, and now Jason Horne-Francis.
Things can turn very quickly if you want to go down that
It's
path.
actually a good point, Hughesy.
I'll bring up the discussion that we had pre-show.
Actually, I'd like to go there too, because I think I know what you're talking about. Bill loves the positives, Hughesy, so I'm assuming you do too. We'll stick with the positives, and we'll start this particular segment with the Blues, who I felt learnt from the problems they had the previous week in losing narrowly, albeit, to Collingwood, in that they brought the ball in a different way to their forward line. Curnow got a bit further up. They were certainly looking for options other than he and Mackay, and there was less bombing, and it worked. Now, they only held on by, as we know, the one kick result because Petraccas played a game for the ages, but you package it up, and they're going very, very nicely right now, the Blues.
We were super excited about Thursday night. And early on, obviously, they looked as good as any team this year, JB, wouldn't you say, early on in that game?
They were brilliant.
So, no, we're pumped. Big Friday night, live on Channel 7.
Don't worry about
Huge.
that.
We're going to be there, aren't we?
The Swannies?
Against the
gonna be
Swans.
That's going to be massive.
Walsh and Cripps are just continuing what they're doing in the dominance. And just while we're on the positives, I thought Petraccas' game, Jim,
ridiculous.
I know he won the 2021 Norm Smith medal, so that's clearly a huge issue, an element of his CV.
Yep.
But what he did in the final 3 quarters the other night,
it was
it
amazing.
just athleticism and will and want to bring your team along in an almost impossible way to win and nearly pull it off. I thought it was extraordinary. As was Nick Daicos against West Coast. You sort of weight performances, don't you? And you do factor in the depleted West Coast list yesterday. There was no Yo, there was no Waterman, 2 of their 3 key players for the year, Reid being the other one with the excitement attached. But he's now tapped back into some high-end and very consistent high-end form, which we'd seen from him for pretty much the entirety of 2023 and a lot of 2022.
Yeah,
just a quiet start to the year like his teammates, but by his standards, but he's back.
I think he wanted to send a message to Harley Reid, who's the talk of the West, that, you've got a way to go yet, young fella, to get to where I am at my ripe old age of, 20? Is he 21?
It's his 3rd year, so he's turning 21, won't he? So, yeah, it's extraordinary.
Crazy.
It's extraordinary. What I love too, Jim, is just the fact that the necessity of replacing key players. They didn't have a forward line, Mychek and Elliott, for instance, but we saw 2 weeks ago Lockie Sullivan come in and look at home, and we saw another one by the name of Joe Richards come in on the weekend and also look at home. They both kicked a goal in that particular game. The opportunities given to players who had not been able to crack a regular spot, Finn McRae and Reef McInnes, again, impacted the result. You do factor in the lesser opponent in West Coast, but it was a really good sign for what they did there, to do what they did. Western Bulldogs needed a win and got a big one against Richmond. The pairing of Norton and Darcy, it always on paper has looked threatening. We may be just starting to see it. Obviously, Jamari Ugle-Hagan didn't hit the scoreboard as hard as both Darcy and Norton did. Harms also kicked 4 goals in that particular game. Loved what Ed Richards did too. Had to step into the void of Tom Liberatore not being there, and he was really, really crucial in a role in the midfield that he hadn't had a lot to sample from in his time in the game. So good signs there. Again, quality opposition, still questionable, but all you can do is respond, and they did, as Hawthorn's now done in 3 of the past 4 weeks. Hughesy in getting another done against the Saints down there in Tassie.
They're big, the Hawks. They've got some, that Jack, is it Scrimshaw?
Scrimshaw,
yeah. And he's going to miss. There was a sling tackle that he was imposed against by the match review office, and they, from what I've been told, they won't challenge, so he will miss a game of footy. But Newcomb's really responded to a slow start for the year, a guy who's placed in a couple of best and fairest already at the Hawks and is a gun for them. He's got himself going, and Carl Lehmann's game was quite supreme off halfback for the Hawks. And
do we want draws anymore?
I don't, but it's one of those, I find, Jim, conversations, I think we've been having them on Triple M for the best part of 20 years. They're not going to change it.
No,
Andrew Dillon today.
Why?
I don't know why, because it's a result-driven world that we live in, not just a sporting competition, is it? And I'm all for the result, but we've had this debate many times.
The theatre of it, if you hear that there's a draw, you're screaming to your telly to watch what happens next.
Yeah.
Whether it's a golden goal or whether it's 5 minutes each way, whatever the extra time thing is, you're watching it. So we're an entertainment industry. I'm watching that.
Absolutely. Also, if you broadcast it, the networks, everyone just will come and watch that last 5 minutes because it's extra time.
The crowd will love it.
Exactly. And you're referring to Adelaide and Brisbane, which was a really good game of footy as the last game of round 9 at Adelaide Oval, and you finish the game and you see on the ladder that Adelaide's 12th and Brisbane's 13th. I still feel they're both going to be seriously challenging for finals, even though they're now 10 points away from that particular position. So I like what the Lions have done. If you package up their past fortnight, they had to overcome a lot of adversity against Gold Coast the previous week with those injuries before the game and during, which was more pertinent to that performance. And then to go into Adelaide and all but win the game of footy, I thought was really good. Just on that, Josh Worrell, who was subbed out of the game yesterday in the third quarter, fractured forearm, could be up to 3 months that he's sidelined for.
Yeah. All right, break negatives.
Negatives, we've got to get to them. We try and delay it on a Monday because Bill normally puts the pressure on me to even not talk about the negatives, but we've got to go there.
Now, where are we starting negative-wise?
I feel there's 3 teams that are really problematic right now for themselves and the competition by extension, Hughesy. I'm referring to St Kilda for reasons that are slightly different to the other 2, and that being Richmond and North Melbourne. So we'll start with the Saints because there was a degree of expectation having made finals last year and actually had periods in that final against GWS where they're okay. And they actually came back into it and challenged them, ultimately lost and then finished Ross Lyon's first year as a elimination finalist loser. But it just hasn't worked this year. And they have not got into any form of motion. And the doom and gloom has already hit.
What
at an early
excuses?
stage.
Have they got many injuries? Do they have any big players injured?
There's not. No, there's not. And
No.
they've had some issues with Max King's fitness and
Shoulder.
and shoulder, yeah, and the confidence that he must be suffering from. But he's not performing, and he's on the good wicket, the good wage. The forward line's not working at all. Look, their list is questionable, and some people, and I'm in that camp too, that what Ross did last year was quite extraordinary. But that was the benchmark. Yeah, there's no such thing in my eyes as over exceeding. You exceed and finish where you finish, and that's where they finished last year. But it hasn't worked this year, and it's a problem. They should have beaten Hawthorn on the weekend and didn't. So there's some problems there. Richmond 1 win, 8 losses. Under Adamuzze.
They beat Sydney.
They beat Sydney. It's the greatest
That's
mystery
amazing,
of
isn't it?
2024. Yeah. And that was when the Swans were flying too. So
but they do have lots of injuries.
they do, and that needs to be factored in. That
Put
needs to be
Lynch
factored
back in that side, and they're automatically a 4-goal better side, aren't they?
And even obviously Jack Graham going down on during that particular game early as well. But the bigger problem in my eyes is where the club is actually at. Now, we knew that Damian Hardwick just took off, even though there were 18 months remaining of his contract. And again, what I'm about to say, it's no knock on the individuals and the decisions they've made. It's just the statement of fact, and you package it up. You then get a situation where Brendon Gale has now, as of last week, publicly committed to what the industry had known for some time. He's going to the Tassie Devils to be CEO as of January 1 next year. He's going to spend the rest of the year still at Richmond, and we found out in the weekend that he had broached this exit with the chairman, John O'Rourke, who'd taken over from the successful Peggy O'Neill a year ago. So this had been in the offing while all this was going down. They get Adamuzze in to coach the club, to replace Hardwick, and you then, amidst all that, have the retirements of Revold and Concussion, which has also left them with a bereft leadership situation. So I just think, I've always taken the view, once you have found your next job, you may as well get out. I think it was, again, it's not a knock on Brendon Gale. He could not have done anything more for this football club. But to think that he's going to stay at Richmond now and make decisions pertaining to that club's future, while in the back of his mind, he's trying to set up the establishment of the 19th licence, that's where his focus now is. I think they need to come to an arrangement pretty soon and do it in front of each other, eye to eye. Thank you, Brendon. We really appreciate what you've done, and go out a hero. But he will anyway. But to me, it's just dead time, him being at the football club right now. His responsibilities, he's on the hook. He's on the hook right now to get to Tassie right. It's got nothing to do with Richmond.
Because you got the credit, along with Dimmer and a lot of the players like Dusty, the credit for those 3 premierships.
Yeah.
Like it's almost they can do what they like now, isn't it? Like it's okay, but the club's got to keep going.
It has to keep going.
Yeah.
And the decisions that were made with Damian Hardwick still there to get in Taranto and Hopper, and I know there's been a lot of narrative around that, but do you line that up now with where they are at? And those players, would they have liked to have known how badly the club is off? And Liam Baker's obviously out of contract. Dustin Martin is out of contract. Iconic name in the Martin case, and a very good Richmond name in Baker. It's not appealing place for him to stay. And then we get to the other problematic club in North Melbourne, Jim, and another just a common 68-point loss, this one, to the Gold Coast, and just a percentage of 56.3 after the 9 matches.
Oh, well,
played.
I was taken away for my birthday weekend by my beautiful wife, and I was very grateful that there was no television in Mansfield.
Saturday night, wasn't it?
Saturday night. So I wasn't actually able to watch any television.
You didn't
and
miss
by
much,
the sound
Jim.
of it was a good
I
thing.
did watch most of it, and it was dreadful again, but it always is with North Melbourne.
It was in Darwin. Was it in Darwin?
Yeah,
or was
it
it?
was.
Yeah, it was.
Yep.
So
The
what?
humidity was the problem.
Yeah, well, they dipped the balls at training into the soapy water, and they
did
thought
they?
they were going to be conditioned and prepared for that, but it didn't work, Hughesy. No. So.
The numbers
And they
are-
ruined all the balls.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm interested in what I haven't heard, the press or anything like that, but what Alistair's got by way of not explanation, but what's the strategy? Where are they going? What are they trying to do? What's the what are you aligning that club from a football playing point of view around by way of on-field strategy? I don't know.
No, I don't know either, and I'd suggest you don't listen to the post-match media conference because it was just words that didn't line up with the actions and how we know we're going to turn it around at some stage. I don't know that. Do you know that?
Is he coaching from the boundary or up in the stands? Do you know?
He was on the boundary a lot. I don't know if he was for the whole game, but he was certainly pictured during
Remember
the game.
The first couple of games he coached from the boundary and he was barracking hard and you won. Didn't you win the first couple of games?
First 2 games
It
last
looked
year.
really exciting, didn't it?
Yeah, and then didn't win again until round 20. 4, which was the last game of the year, which ultimately cost them access to the number 1 draft pick and haven't won this year at all. So,
He's filthied up.
I wasn't in the camp of throwing the game. Don't get me wrong.
No,
I
but
think you and I argued at Jim. I think you had a different view, but I was always go for the win because, I mean, they're not capable of keeping. They weren't capable of keeping Jason Horne-Francis. Let's face it.
You know, back in the day, Carlton tanked a few games and got number 1 picks and got them nowhere.
That's right. One more negative.
Yes.
Just in the bigger picture, GWS started 5-0. They're now 6-3. Essendon really did a good number on them on the weekend. They lost to Sydney the previous week. Prior to that, they had beaten Brisbane Lions, but lost to Carlton the week before. So 3 losses out of the past 4 weeks. And Adam Kingsley, just post-match, they're nowhere near where he wanted them to be. And it's just a watch at this stage. Because Toby Green, it's unusual. In the time he's been in the game, and he was a first-year player for that club in 2012, this is the least impact he's had to this point of a season, even in that very first year when he was a teenager. So just a bit of a watch.
Purple is a North Melbourne man, by the way.
I know that,
Hughesy.
mate.
So
I know that.
when his eyes narrow and he filthies up, that's why.
Comes from a good place.
Yeah, it does.
The problem is, you could see it coming. You could see it coming.
Well,
as far back as 2016 when they decided to get rid of Boomer.
You've got access. Why weren't you in Clarko's presser?
No,
Oh, it was up
Damo.
north, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Do you normally go? Would you go to?
No.
If you,
How long
never?
has it been since you've been in a presser?
A good 25 years.
25.
No one goes to presses anymore these days. It looks like.
Imagine the copy you'd get if you asked these questions to them in the presser.